how I went about creating this live edge walnut bench. As most of these live edge projects start out, taking the bark off that sapwood there sometimes is easy and sometimes gives me a little trouble. On this one in particular, I got most of it off. The other side was definitely a lot cleaner. This side gave me a little trouble on the end there, but basically end up doing what you can and grabbing whatever's available to you, and trying to be careful not to cause too much damage to the sapwood. I don't mind so much trying to make my own contours. Sometimes I kind of give it a little extra or different detail. It really depends on the piece of wood that I end up getting my hands on. Some of them have chainsaw marks or flat spots from the sawmill, or all sorts of things. So I just kind of use whatever tools I have available to kind of change the contours and then try to duplicate the edge that it's next to and make it look as natural as possible. On this one, everything was so smooth, it didn't really have a problem doing this to it, so that I could kind of get it back to a natural state. But some of that stuff was just on there pretty good. And I don't have a lot of experience with doing live edge stuff, but you live and learn, so just kind of go at it. Whatever happens, happens. Wanted to take a second too to say thanks to everybody on that last video of that square 38-inch Claro walnut table. A lot of great feedback on that. I really do appreciate it. So thank you guys for saying all the kind things that you did. And this one's going to be a little long, so hopefully you stick around and watch the full process. Some random things happening here. A lot of these projects that I do, it's kind of a first time for most of this stuff. Round stock metal like this too, I don't have a lot of experience in fabricating it. I'm not a professional welder. I don't, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do anything, or you should follow any directions on this. These are purely entertainment videos. I just kind of film in the process. Mainly most of this stuff is kind of just related to the fact that a lot of my friends end up asking me how I did things, and instead of sending them little clips here and there, I kind of decided to make this channel in particular anyway, just so that I can kind of send it to them, and then they'd have more of a full explanation of the process that I went through. But I do appreciate everybody kind of joining in and checking it out for themselves, and hopefully you pick up a tip or two here and there. Like I said, a lot of the stuff is first time for me. I have my own personal experience. I'm kind of self-taught with a lot of this stuff. My main profession is all related to remodeling, and I never really did any of this stuff during my bathroom and kitchen remodel years. But it's fun. I'm loving every second of this. So anyway, I got 4-inch pipe stock, and I bought some 4-inch caps, and this is a kind of one of the first for me here. I never tried to cap pipe before. These pipes were actually off of a table base in a video that's coming up down the road. I kind of went a little backwards and figured I'd get this one out. If you follow me on Instagram, I have posted this bench on there, and kind of wanted to show the people that were interested in how I went about this whole process. So anyway, I cleaned up the edges, and like I said, not a professional welder, but I get the job done. And this was the first time for me to kind of trying to seal off an end of a pipe and trying to get it to make it look like I didn't. And I kind of hit it with these wheels are those bullnose wheels. They're 40 grit. Start with that to get off the bulk. Kind of transfer down from there. Hit it with 80, and then I'll typically try to get it. If it's going to get powder coated, then I'll go into the sanding mode with an orbital sander. But this seemed to work pretty good. I was happy with it. You know, if I see a little pit here and there, then I'll just tack into that hole and fill it in and kind of do that little process over. Seemed to work out fine enough for me at least. And you know, if you do have any suggestions on certain things, I'm completely open to suggestions from people who actually have more experience than me. You know, like I said, I get it done, but yeah, I'm always into trying to learn a little more as the process goes on. But basically, yeah, just cleaning it up, trying to get everything ready to stack together. And my initial concept design was to take 4-inch pipe pieces, cap the ends, stack them for the one side, and then the alternate side of the bench was going to be a live edge. Also, have never done a live edge miter like that before, so it gets a little interesting. I kind of mess things up here and there, but kind of wanted to bring you along so you can see what I did and what I didn't do and what I should have done, and maybe you won't make some of these same mistakes. So like I said, some of these pieces were from a previous table base that I had, and on that base, when I initially made it, I was just kind of messing around trying to get a color right. I polished a few pieces, I sprayed a few pieces black. I was trying to just get a tone for that table base in particular. So on these ends, I'm just kind of cleaning everything up, getting all that paint and polish off, and just getting everything ready to weld up and finished out for powder coat so I can send it off. What I was doing here is just adding a little shim. For some reason, when I stuck that cap on the end there, it just didn't line up exactly perfect. So I just was taking little pieces of little random things I could find and just kind of sticking it underneath just so I could get it lined up a little better. Main thing I was focusing on is, you know, doing this by hand instead of having a nice big flat, you know, some kind of belt sander or something. Was just trying not to dig too deep into the main stock itself, because obviously if you get a little wild with that, you're gonna end up seeing those grooves, and if you dig a little too deep, then not really going to be able to get it out. It's going to take a lot of feathering, so I was just trying to be really careful on the edge there just to keep it uniform, and then on the end there just buzzing off some of that mill scale. Some of that stuff gets pretty tough. So I try to end all the sanding at finished a 120 before I sent it off to go get powder coated. Since these pieces are all going to get stacked and the round contours of them being stacked vertically like that, I just figured I'd get everything sanded down before I tack them together, because it'd be a little hard afterwards to get into all the tight contours in the center of them. So one of the biggest problems that I encountered during this process is I was a little gung-ho, a little excited to finally get to tack these things together. It was quite a long process to get all those caps done and everything grinded and sanded down. So when I got to this point, I was kind of so concerned with getting everything straight that I didn't stick bars across the top and kind of clamp everything together and hold them down. And if you're familiar with welding, that heat transfer that goes into it when you're welding, it kind of pulls things up towards itself. And so, like I said, not a professional welder, but you know, I'm going at it. And I soon realized right after I got to this level that end one on the right there was actually started to curl up, and so it wasn't completely flat when I was finished. And when I finally realized that, then I ended up having to go through and the quickest option I had was this, just kind of cutting these welds open, which ended up being fine. It didn't really affect anything. I mean, at this point, as long as I didn't hit one of the pipes themselves, then I was good to go. But so I cut a little reliefs down the ends and was able to stick these steel bars on top, clamp everything down, and then kind of just individually tack them and work my way back to the back, and everything was fine after that, so no big deal. Here I'm just chopping the steel plate that's going to be the bracket to hold everything together for the top of the bench. The hard part, the trick to the initial concept when I came up with the idea for the bench was that I didn't want them to the leg base and the waterfall edge to be a complete 90 degrees to the top going to the floor. So I wanted this base side to kick out 5 degrees, as well as the waterfall side to kick out 5 degrees, so it had just a slight slope on the wide side, towards the bottom. So it took me a second to kind of get everything lined up and play with it a little bit just to get that angle right. I knew I had a little bit of leeway when I actually routed into the wood, but I kind of wanted to have it preset at a slight angle so that I could kind of get it in and wouldn't have to route the wood, with a slope in it. All in all, everything turned out good, and I'm just kind of giving it another quick cleanup so that I can get some of that little slag and any little divots and bumps off. I didn't want him to have to really deal with too much of the cleanup on when he's getting ready to powder coat. So did what I could, gave it a little acetone bath, and ended up sending it off to get powder coated. And I ended up going with a satin black. It's kind of my go-to for some of these bases. Probably get into some other fancy stuff down the road, but for now, satin black seems to be the way to go to match up to the finished look of what I'm trying to do. So, this is where I kind of jumped ahead of myself. Now, this piece of wood has been ready to go, and I get pretty busy usually during most of my life. I've been a pretty busy guy, so got a lot of awesome people out there, great customers of mine that are always giving me random projects to do, and I still do remodels here and there and help. I got kind of like a little inner circle of people that I kind of am there to support them. I feel bad when they have to go find somebody else to kind of do their work, so I end up getting pretty occupied. So this piece has been sitting around for a while, and I had time to make the bench. And when I initially started this part, you can see right there that it had started cupping at some point, and I figured, I haven't done a waterfall miter edge like this, and I figured maybe if I just went for it, I could sand it and get out the cup and see if I could line it up. And I know that when you do these, that you have a really minimal tolerance of wood you can take off before it starts actually showing for when the miter connects. And I just went for it anyway. I had just previously built the workbench that you see me working on, and I didn't get a chance to try out the whole new router sled setup that I kind of incorporated into the workbench. And I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna give this a try. And when I started to see how it lined up with that cup in it, there's just not really anything I could do. I attempted to sand it, made a couple pencil lines, and I sat there and tried to see if I could manipulate it in a way, with still keeping in the back of my head that you got this minimal tolerance to take away any material that will affect the overall look of it. So I'm attempting to do this without throwing the pieces on the sled, and come to find out, I wasn't happy with the way that they were lining up. I didn't want to go through the rest of the process and ruin the entire project over trying to skip a step, and sometimes we try to get away with things. It's completely fine. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it didn't. So I kind of stopped myself right there. I saw how much cup there was, and I figured, now's a good time to set up the router sled and see how the whole new system worked. And that's what I did. So I was actually kind of happy to be able to give this thing a test run. Pretty proud of the way this bench turned out. I have posted random little clips on my Instagram reels, and I've had a lot of questions about the bench itself, and I did record the entire build process, and I will be doing a kind of a day-to-day vlog series on the YouTube channel here of me building it and kind of explaining the whole crazy process and how I tried to incorporate everything that I was missing from all the other workbenches and have everything set up in this, so it was kind of self-contained. I incorporated this whole router sled setup based on a setup that I had on the last bench that I was working with, and and it's adjustable in and out and lengthwise, so I actually can get a 5-foot by 11-foot slab on here, or random pieces, and kind of mill everything up. So turned out pretty cool, and I was happy to give it a little test run on this. It has height adjustments, that's why those threaded bolts, little tweaks still going on with it, so that's why it wasn't really ready to make the final videos of it yet, but still working on it. But definitely happy to see that everything was functioning properly. And I like doing the milling process myself. I have buddies down local that have big crazy Laguna CNC machines and whatnot if I need them, but I kind of enjoy this process. And just like in the last video where I had to get on the ground and fab up ones that would fit the slabs I was working on adequately, that was kind of a pain. So this ended up turning out great, and hopefully you'll come back and check out the build video of the workbench. So I ended up using the aluminum extrusions for the hold downs on this. In the past, I've just used scrap wood and screwed down to an MDF subtop or something just to hold everything in place. And this seemed to work out a little better. Still kind of playing around with the design of it, but if I can hold down a little piece like this, I shouldn't have any problems with some bigger slabs in the future. So kind of happy about that. And finally back to actually cutting the waterfall edge the way that it was intended to be, flat. And I don't have the 75 track saw that goes deep, so I had a customer of mine a while back gave me these little clamp down straight edge deals. They seem to be something that I could use for this situation. I wanted to take the track saw down. It had a little bit of a bigger lip than the track itself, and it kind of self-clamped on those weird angles. Just wanted to make sure I got all the way through that 45. It's actually a little different than 45. Like I said, I have that 5-degree little kick off there, but seemed to work good. Just cleaning it up didn't take off a lot of meat. I knew it was going to be a little bit offset, and I was going to deal with that in the sapwood area and just kind of clean it up, manipulate it so that it kind of ended up looking like it was a fluid transition. So went with the 10 millimeter dominoes and thought that would be pretty adequate for this application. That I think it was about 13 or 14 inches wide, that black walnut is. So that being sitting on the ground the way it was and have the base on the other side, I figured this was gonna hold tight, and so far so good. I don't consider myself a professional welder, and I don't consider myself a professional woodworker either. So a lot of this stuff is still, like I said, just kind of new to me, playing as I go along, having a great time, that's all. So if you see me doing anything that you might do different, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm always ready to hear some suggestions. It's pretty enjoyable to hear what people have to say. And if you pick something up off me that you haven't tried before, then that's great. But I'm definitely always willing to hear things out and learn and perfect the craft. And there there, you can kind of see that angle, that degree that I was trying to give both sides. And that being said, that's why I haven't cut the waterfall edge piece flat yet. I wanted to just be safe and get everything lined up and measure everything perfectly so that I could get it all attached, make sure that went well. That did kind of present a situation where I had to figure out how to hold everything together while I did cut it at the exact pitch and angle of the bottom so that it sat flat on the floor. It being intact, the only thing I could think of was to kind of utilize the table and clamp everything to it and kind of cut it in a vertical position, which was not so bad. I thought it would be a lot worse, but it ended up turning out okay. And this was one of those times that I know I should have had a mask on right there, but you know, sometimes one cut, mask is so far away, and I didn't. But I'm sure somebody's concerned about it, and I appreciate it. And another thing that I typically don't have a lot of experience with is routing out plates like this. You know, I'll live and learn, but it turned out okay. Trying to figure out the best way to get as much meat out of that center as possible. Didn't want to waste too much time building crazy jigs. Just kind of did the tape and CA glue for some little strips of 1/4 inch MDF on the sides. That kind of held me at least on those long stretches. And just was mainly guiding the router over the center meat to get what I could, and then just kind of hand chiseled and sanded down the rest on the inside. I knew most of that was going to be hidden. Wanted it to be as clean as possible. It's underneath the bench, but it all turned out okay, so no complaints. I did end up just softening that edge a little bit to kind of go with the design of the pipe base on the other side, and considering it's a bench, didn't want it to be sharp. I know that alters the details a little bit, but that's the way it needed to be. Doing the inserts this time, I ended up actually trying to use just wood glue on the inserts. Typically I've used CA glue in the past. I haven't had any problems with that. Just figured I'd try something a little different and see how that reacted as far as the initial mounting of the base. If anybody has any suggestions or experiences with one or the other going bad, then please share. now that I had everything put together and situated and knew that I was kind of headed for the finish line, I figured this would be the good time to actually sand everything down to a finished sand. I do tend to go 220, even though typically I'll use only Rubio monocoat on natural wood like this. I think they require 180 at the end. On occasion, I will do 180, but I kind of like to have it a little smoother. I haven't seen any adverse effects of that, but just kind of seems to be just a better go-to for me to kind of get it up to 220, and so that's what I do, and I haven't had any problems with the finish in any way, and I've thoroughly tested the final products. And after blowing everything off, I just kind of give it a little mineral spirit bath and make sure to get any dusty residue off of there. And finally getting ready for that Rubio. I do use just this really cheap orbital buffer polisher that I got on Amazon. I think there's a bunch of brands that are all pretty much the same manufacturer at the end of the day, but nothing special there. It seems to have a decent balance. I was able to find those 5-inch Scotchgard pads, and I actually have like a cushion soft pad in the middle of that, and so that kind of helps just spread everything around. Those orbital pads help a lot. I got the rectangle ones and cut them to size. They seem to throw a lot of extra little fibers everywhere, and when you cut them down and kind of spin awkwardly. I use those for just hand applications, but those 5-inch pads, if you can find those on there, I'll see if I can leave a link in the description, but those things are pretty awesome and inexpensive, nice little pack. And if you store them properly and you're doing multiple projects, you can kind of keep using them. And that's about it for this one. And I really enjoyed making this one. Definitely want to do some similar projects in the future, and had a great time, learned a lot. Always learning something. I think that's one of the main reasons why I enjoy doing this so much, is just kind of stepping out of bounds and learning a few new things every time and kind of growing. But I appreciate you all sticking around to the end, and hopefully you got at least some enjoyment out of the video itself. Maybe learn a few things or for your future projects as well. And I hope to see you on the next one. And if you're interested in that workbench, just stand by, because that little vlog's coming. Thanks.